There's an ancient truth that modern society has buried under layers of taboo, shame, and misinformation. A truth known to the great masters of antiquity, encoded in Napoleon Hill's deepest writings, and which today remains a whispered secret among those who dare to delve into the deeper waters of human achievement. This truth is unsettling because it challenges everything you've been conditioned to believe about pleasure, power, and purpose. Let me ask a question that might make you uncomfortable. Why do some men exude a magnetic presence that makes others instinctively bow in respect, while others, even with all the material achievements in the world, go unnoticed like shadows? Why did certain historical figures, Gandhi, Tesla, Leonardo da Vinci, possess an energy that transcended the ordinary, a force that made them simultaneously feared and revered? The answer lies buried in a principle that most men waste every day, without even realizing they're throwing away their most precious source of power. We live in an age bombarded with messages telling us that letting go is healthy, that yielding to impulses is natural, that satisfying every desire is a right. The adult entertainment industry grossed over $97 billion last year, built on the premise that you should consume, discharge, and repeat this cycle endlessly. But what if I told you that every time you give in to this seemingly harmless impulse, you're literally draining the essence of what could make you extraordinary? Napoleon Hill, in his studies of history's most successful men, discovered what he called the secret of secrets. He observed that virtually all giants of human achievement shared one characteristic: they had learned to transmute their sexual energy into creative, mental, and spiritual strength. This wasn't about repression that would simply transfer the problem elsewhere. It was something far more sophisticated and powerful, the conscious alchemy of life force. Imagine for a moment that within you burns an ancestral fire. This fire isn't just sexual desire, it's the very essence of creation, the divine spark that moves planets and builds empires. When this fire burns uncontrollably, it consumes everything around it, leaving only ashes and emptiness. But when this same fire is channeled, directed, and transformed by conscious will, it becomes the forge where extraordinary destinies are forged. Modern society has taught us to see semen as merely a biological fluid, but ancient traditions knew it carried far more than genetic material. They understood that this substance contained the concentrated essence of masculine life force, not just of the body, but of the mind and spirit. Taoists called this Jing, the most refined and precious energy a man possesses. Yogists recognized it as ogas, the fuel of spiritual enlightenment. Medieval alchemists referred to it as the philosopher's mercury, the raw material of inner transformation. When you retain this essence, something extraordinary happens, not magically or mystically, but through very real and measurable biological and psychological processes. Testosterone levels rise and stabilize at higher levels. Confidence is no longer a mask you wear, but a natural radiance of your being. Your voice gains gravity, your eyes acquire intensity, your presence becomes magnetic in a way that transcends any seduction technique or artificial charisma. But here's what truly separates ordinary men from those who become legendary. It's not simply physical retention, it's the conscious transmutation of that energy. It's the alchemic process of turning the lead of primal impulse into the gold of higher achievement. When you learn to feel this energy circulating in your body, rising up your spine, fueling your brain, expanding your consciousness, you're no longer wasting your life force, you're using it as fuel to become the most powerful version of yourself. Napoleon Hill observed that men who mastered this art possessed a distinctive quality: they emanated what he called transmuted sexual magnetism. It wasn't seduction in the common sense, it was a far deeper and more universal attraction. It was the attraction we feel for those who have mastered themselves, who have transformed their weaknesses into strengths, who have found gold where others see only common ground. Tesla, the genius who lit up the world, remained celibate for most of his life, channeling all his sexual energy into his revolutionary inventions. Gandhi, the man who brought down an empire through sheer willpower, practiced brahmacharya, the conservation of sexual energy, as the foundation of his spiritual power. Steve Jobs, known for his almost supernatural intensity and reality distortion field, followed Eastern practices that included the conservation of sexual energy as a way to maximize mental clarity and focus. But pay attention, we're not talking about men who denied their sexuality or lived as monks. We're talking about men who understood that there's a fundamental difference between using your sexual energy and wasting it. The difference between owning your power and being a slave to your impulses. When you release this energy compulsively and repeatedly, you're not just losing a few minutes of your day, you're draining the battery of your life force. You're dissipating the substance from which dreams, visions, and great achievements are made. You're literally ejaculating your potential for mediocrity. And here we arrive at the dark heart of this truth. We live in a society that profits from weakened men. An entire industry has been built to keep you in a perpetual cycle of desire, satisfaction, and emptiness. The more you consume, the less power you possess. The less power you possess, the more of a consumer you become. It's a perfect system of control, disguised as liberation. Think of the men you know who exude genuine respect, not through arrogance or aggression, but through a calm, unwavering presence. Observe their eyes, notice how they move through the world, perceive how others respond to their energy, even before a word is spoken. These men have discovered the secret I'm sharing with you now. They've learned to be alchemists of their own essence. The transmutation of sexual energy isn't some abstract or esoteric concept. It's a practical process involving conscious discipline, focused breathing, visualization, and above all, understanding that you're dealing with the most powerful force within you. When you feel the urge arising, instead of automatically discharging it, you learn to breathe deeply, to feel this energy as a golden fire rising up your spine, fueling your brain, expanding your consciousness. This energy, when transmuted, doesn't disappear, it transforms. It becomes explosive creativity that generates revolutionary ideas. It transforms into personal magnetism that attracts opportunities and valuable people into your life. It evolves into an unshakable confidence that needs no external validation because it springs from an inexhaustible internal source. And if you've come this far, if these words are resonating somewhere deep within you, then you're not like most. You're someone who seeks uncomfortable truths instead of comfortable lies. You're someone willing to question the conditioning you've received and explore territories few have the courage to traverse. That's why I want to make a special invitation. If this content is awakening something in you, if you feel you're in the presence of information that can transform your life, then don't let it pass you by. Subscribe to this channel now and hit the notification bell, because what I'm sharing here isn't just theory, it's a practical roadmap to the complete transformation of the man you are into the man you can become. This journey we're starting together is just the beginning of an inner revolution that few will have the privilege to experience. Don't just be another spectator, become part of this community of men who have chosen to awaken their dormant power. But returning to our exploration, let me be even more direct about what happens when you master this art. First, your relationship with fear transforms completely. Fear, at its core, is always about loss, fear of losing status, approval, security, pleasure. But when you possess an internal source of power that cannot be touched by external circumstances, when you know your strength comes from within and can be renewed at any time through conscious transmutation, fear loses its hold over you. Second, your ability to focus and concentrate multiplies exponentially. A scattered mind is always a mind seeking external gratification. When you stop leaking your energy through compulsive releases, that same energy becomes available to be directed toward your goals. You discover you can work for hours without fatigue, that you can maintain laser focus on important projects, that you can see solutions where others see only problems. Third, your social magnetism becomes irresistible, but not in the superficial way you might be imagining. You don't become more attractive because you're holding back something. You become magnetic because you're radiating fullness instead of lack. People are drawn to those who possess something they feel they lack. When you transmute your sexual energy, you develop a quality of presence that is simultaneously calm and intense, relaxed and alert, approachable and mysterious. Fourth, your intuition sharpens dramatically. Sexual energy, when not wasted, fuels the higher centers of consciousness. You begin to know things without knowing how you know. You develop a perception about people and situations that seems almost supernatural. You become able to read the subtle energies around you, to sense opportunities before they manifest obviously, to navigate life with a wisdom that transcends common logic. And here we arrive at the deepest and most transformative aspect of this practice. It forces you to confront all your shadows, all your escape mechanisms, all the unconscious patterns that keep you trapped in cycles of mediocrity. When you stop using sexual release as an escape valve for emotional tensions, those tensions don't disappear, they come to the surface to be consciously processed. This can be intense. You may discover that your sexual compulsion was masking deep wounds of rejection, abandonment trauma, feelings of inadequacy that you preferred not to face. You may realize that every time you sought that momentary relief, you were actually running away from difficult conversations with yourself, from responsibilities you preferred to postpone, from dreams you were afraid to pursue. But this is precisely where the alchemy happens. When you learn to be present with these uncomfortable energies, when you stop medicating them with instant gratification, something extraordinary happens. They transform. Anxiety becomes fuel for action. Repressed anger transforms into focused determination. Loneliness alchemizes into a deep capacity for connection with yourself, and consequently with others. This is not a journey for the faint of heart. This is the journey of the inner warrior, of the one who is willing to descend into their own hell to emerge as the master of their own destiny. Each urge you consciously transmute instead of automatically wasting is a victory over the forces that want to keep you small, controllable, predictable. And when you begin to experience the fruits of this discipline, the crystalline mental clarity, the seemingly inexhaustible energy, the magnetism that attracts extraordinary opportunities and people, the confidence that needs no external validation, you understand why this wisdom has been guarded as a secret by the great masters throughout history. You understand why men who master this art are simultaneously feared and respected. They are feared because they represent a threat to the status quo, because their mere presence exposes the mediocrity of those who have settled for less. They are respected because everyone recognizes, even unconsciously, the power that emanates from those who have conquered themselves. But let me be clear about something important. This is not a practice of denial or repression. This is a practice of refinement and redirection. It's the difference between being an uncontrolled fire that consumes everything around it and being a focused laser that can cut through any obstacle. It's the difference between being a slave to your impulses and being the conductor of the orchestra of your inner energies. When you master this art, you don't become less sexual, you become sexually sovereign. Your sexuality ceases to be a compulsion that controls you and becomes a creative force that you consciously direct. You don't lose the capacity for pleasure, you develop the ability to choose when, how, and with whom to share your most precious energy. And here we arrive at a crucial distinction that most people don't understand. There's a fundamental difference between celibacy and sexual transmutation. Celibacy is simply abstinence, a practice that can be valuable, but which in itself doesn't generate power. Sexual transmutation is the art of converting that energy into fuel for higher achievement. It's an active, conscious, and directed process. When Tesla worked in his labs for days without rest, fueled by an energy that seemed supernatural, he wasn't simply not having sex. He was consciously channeling his life force to fuel his inventive genius. When Gandhi confronted the British Empire with a determination that baffled his opponents, he wasn't merely practicing abstinence, he was transforming his sexual energy into spiritual and political power. Modern science is beginning to validate what the ancients knew intuitively. Studies show that semen retention is associated with higher and more stable testosterone levels, increased bone density, improved cognitive function, and enhanced physical endurance. Research in neuroplasticity demonstrates that when we stop excessively stimulating the brain's reward circuits through compulsive sexual gratification, other neural circuits, those related to creativity, focus, and decision-making, strengthen significantly. But beyond the measurable benefits, there's something even deeper happening. There's a transformation in the very quality of your presence in the world. You cease to be someone who is constantly seeking something outside of themselves, approval, pleasure, distraction, and become someone who radiates wholeness. This shift is felt by everyone around you, even if they can't consciously identify what is different about you. People begin to see you as someone solid, reliable, centered. Your words carry weight because they come from a place of inner integrity. Your decisions become wiser because they are no longer clouded by the fog of compulsive gratification. Your creativity explodes because the energy that was once wasted in cycles of desire and satisfaction is now available for authentic expression. And then something even more extraordinary happens. You begin to attract into your life people and opportunities that are aligned with this new, elevated version of yourself. The universe, which always mirrors back to us the quality of energy we radiate, begins to respond to your inner transformation with corresponding outer transformations. Superficial relationships naturally fall away, replaced by deeper and more meaningful connections. Business opportunities that require the kind of focused and sustained energy you've developed begin to appear in your life. Creative projects that once seemed impossible to complete become not only possible but inevitable. But perhaps the most profound transformation is in your relationship with yourself. You cease to be someone who needs to escape themselves through external distractions and pleasure. You become someone who genuinely enjoys their own company, who finds deep satisfaction in quiet contemplation, focused work, and the pursuit of excellence. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. Like any major change, it requires time, patience, and above all, compassion for yourself. When you stumble along the way, there will be times when you falter, when old patterns seem stronger than your determination to change. But each time you get up and start again, you are strengthening the muscles of self-discipline and conscious transmutation. The key is to understand that you're not fighting against your sexual nature. You're learning to collaborate with it in a more sophisticated and powerful way. You're discovering that the same fire that can burn your house to the ground can also forge you into something indestructible. And as you progress on this journey, you will begin to understand why so many extraordinary men throughout history guarded this knowledge as a secret treasure. You will understand why entire societies have been built on the principle of keeping the masses dispersed and weakened through compulsive gratification. You will realize that your journey of sexual transmutation is not just about personal development. It's about reclaiming your power in a world that profits from your weakness. Because in the end, a man who has mastered his sexual energy is a man who cannot be easily controlled, manipulated, or distracted from his higher purposes. He has become an agent of his own destiny, a conscious creator of his reality, a force for transformation in a world that desperately needs men who have dared to become whole. So, we've reached the end of this revelation, but also the beginning of a new possibility for your life. The truth I've shared with you today isn't just information, it's a gateway to a version of yourself you may have only glimpsed in rare moments of clarity and power. It's an invitation to join the ranks of those who've chosen the harder, infinitely more rewarding path of inner mastery. The primal fire burns within you right now. The question remains, will you continue to let it be wasted on fleeting pleasures, or will you have the courage to transform it into the force that will carry you beyond any limits you ever imagined possible? The choice, as always, is yours. But you can no longer say you didn't know. You now carry the burden and privilege of those who know the truth. Use this wisdom wisely, and become the man this world is waiting for you to become.